The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Tonight on The Agenda.
These events can create a tremendous amount of waste, as you mentioned in your introduction. So trying to keep these festivals as sustainable as possible is very, very important.
Then, later on The Agenda.
I think when you look at the tailwinds from immigration and you see this inflection point that we're seeing now in terms of multiple stakeholders investing in the sport, it's only a matter of time. I think by 2031, cricket will be a top 5 sport in this country, and there's really no reason for it not to become that.
Also tonight.
Poilievre understands that there's anger on the right and the left, and he's trying to channel that anger from both sides, and doing so very effectively at the moment.
Summer is near, and so are some of our favorite outdoor events and festivals. Yet the aftermath of most events shows overflowing waste bins and loose litter, not to mention the carbon emissions released to run the event. What can festivals do to implement green initiatives and minimize their ecological and carbon footprint? Let's ask. In Kingston, Ontario, via Skype, Gabriella D. She's an avid festival volunteer with a master's in environmental studies from Queen's University. In Orillia, Ontario, via Skype, Pam Carter, president of the Mariposa Folk Festival. And with us here in studio, Kate Johnston, who's executive director of the Hillside Festival, which is where, Kate?
It's in Guelph.
In Guelph, Ontario. Beautiful. And to Gabrielle and Pam, thanks for joining us here on TVO tonight for what I would suggest is a timely discussion, given all of what's about to transpire in our province. So, Gabriella, to you first. Why is sustainability important, in your view, when considering hosting these kinds of festivals and events?
Well, as we know, there's a huge issue with the environment, and we want to be as sustainable as possible with everything that we do. And these events can create a tremendous amount of waste, as you mentioned in your introduction. So trying to keep these festivals as sustainable as possible is very, very important. And also it increases the participation of people who want to come, because especially young audiences really want to come to festivals that they know are going to be as green as possible.
Well, let me follow up with Pam on that. Is that in fact the case? Do you know for a fact that people care how environmentally sensible these festivals are?
We do. Mariposa does an audience survey post-festival every year, and we always ask questions on sustainability and environmental responsibility. So I totally agree with what Gabby has been saying. And I think patrons want good value for their entertainment dollar, but they also they've changed their expectations, and they want events that are environmentally responsible.
We have some examples of that very thing. Kate, we're going to show some pictures here. Have a look at the wall in the studio over there at the monitor. And Sheldon, if you would, let's bring up some of these pictures. And you can, okay, take us through this, what we're looking at, and give a bit of a description for people who are listening on podcast right now.
Absolutely. So yeah, what we can see there is a reusable stainless steel Hillside mug. So one of the green initiatives that we've implemented at Hillside Festival is that we don't serve any of our alcoholic beverages in cans. Or in a throwaway red plastic cup. You have to purchase or bring your own stainless steel mug. And through the ingenuity of some of our brewery partners, all the alcohol is served, poured from a tap. And that way we eliminate even the recyclable aluminum waste. We eliminate that at our festival.
Okay, what's this next thing here?
So again, at Hillside, we through the ingenuity of decades of volunteers, we actually on site we have a 4-stream trash management system. So what you're seeing there is what we would call a trash turnaround. They're found throughout the entire festival. So we're separating out garbage for landfill. Any recycling we do have, we actually compost on site.
And people do this?
And people do this. But the best part is the 4th one, which is our reusable dishes.
Oh, well, okay. I think we got that shot here too. Volunteer dishwashing with, is this with solar-powered water heating?
Absolutely. Again, we're very proud at Hillside Festival to offer, we have absolutely no single-use dishes of any kind. We only use reusable cups, plates, and cutlery. And these are washed, these are used in our food court throughout the island, and they are washed on site by up to about 200 volunteers for about 8,000 people over the weekend. It's pretty amazing to see in action.
And people don't mind doing this?
Absolutely. It's one of our most popular volunteer crews. People apply months in advance to be on our dishwashing crew. You know, we have a mind to making it a place to be and making it fun. From our dishwashing area, you actually have an amazing view of our main stage performances. So we really, you know, we incentivize, you know, wanting to participate in that.
Okay, Pam, I want to put you on the hot seat now here, and we've got some shots from Mariposa. So let's bring these pictures up, Sheldon, if we can. This is, I gather, a hydration station for reusable water bottles. Take us through that. What are we seeing?
Well, I echo Kate's remarks about the ingenuity of volunteers. A number of years ago, when I first started coordinating the festival, when I came back post-festival, there was a mountain of single-use water bottles. So we had a conservation club who partnered with us, and they went to one of the local water stores, and they developed this, what was originally a counter with commercial spigots to fill water bottles. And from that, we've not looked back. We are single water bottle use free, and we provide free water to our patrons and communicate every year, please bring a reusable cup because we will not be having single-use water bottles.
All right, let's go to the next picture, Sheldon, if we can. And I see two people on a bicycle, and I see a cell phone charging station, and I presume there is some relationship between the two. What's going on here?
That's right. That's right. A number of years ago, also, we partnered up with a local business to have people-powered phone charging stations. So to get off the grid, to try and use as little power as possible. And it's a really popular station. Artists get on it, patrons get on it, and they ride, they recharge their phones or their iPads, and it's just been a great addition to the festival.
You got any other sustainable stuff that you do at Mariposa?
Oh, we do all kinds of things. We've got shuttle buses, we've got a bike lockup for people to ride their bike. We encourage alternate transportation modes, forest stewardly certified paper for our products, and all of our servingware is compostable, so we don't use any it is single use, but we don't use any plastic or polystyrene. So everything that the patrons receive their food or drinks on is all compostable. And we have about an 84% diversion rate from the waste landfill station, if you will.
Gabby, what do you think of those numbers?
That's all amazing. I help volunteer at the Skeleton Park Arts Festival, and we try to do a lot of similar things. We also have Utilities Kingston comes with this little water truck that has spigots on the side where you can drink from a water fountain or refill a reusable water bottle, because we also do not serve water, but there's free water available. And in conjunction with all the food vendors, we make sure that everything that they use to serve our patrons on is compostable. No plastics basically are allowed at the festival at all. And I also volunteer at the Memorial Center Farmers Market, which is run every Sunday, just once a week. But we also started to implement reusable dishes. So we have real dishes, real cutlery, real cups that are used by the vendors to serve the patrons who are going to be eating at the market. And then I have the thrill of helping to wash all of those after the market day is over. But it's great because my little station is right next to the garbage can, and it's amazing to see that not get filled and just, try to fill the compost bin instead.
Great.
Yeah.
Kate, there are obviously going to be hundreds of festivals all over Ontario as the summer approaches. And I guess I'm wondering, this is all very impressive, but how many festivals actually do what you and Pam are doing?
That's a great question. I think it's certainly something that's on every festival organizer's mind. But as much of a struggle as it was before the pandemic, it continues to be a struggle. Just like in our day-to-day lives, usually, purchasing the more green or sustainable option usually is the more expensive option. And as festivals, I think festivals are really struggling financially after the pandemic. I'd be curious to ask Pam what she thinks, but certainly it costs about 40% more to put on a festival now than it did in 2019.
40%?
40% more. That's certainly true for Hillside Festival. So you can just imagine the pressures that event organizers are under to keep their events financially sustainable, but to invest in those green and sustainable initiatives. So I think that a lot of festivals have it on their minds, but they might not feel like they're able to invest in those initiatives, especially at this time.
Pam, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I would agree with what Kate's saying. When I put my order in this year for our compostable products, I had a bit of sticker shock for sure. But we're committed to the process and we'll continue forward. And our audience has bought into it as well, so they expect it. So it's something that we'll continue to do, and we'll look for ways to economize. And just 2 years ago, our board of directors had a strategic planning session. So we now have a committee on our board of directors that's looking for sustainable options. So we can't rest on our laurels. We have to keep moving forward to seeing what other ways can we be more environmentally conscious. So we'll continue to do that work as well.
Gabby, your efforts and the efforts of Pam and Kate are admirable. But again, I come back to the question, how many festivals, in fact, across Ontario are taking this approach? What can you tell us on that?
I don't really know the number, but it seems that from what I've read, a greater and greater number are starting to do this kind of thing. And from what we've heard from everybody else as well, one of the really important things to trying to make a festival more sustainable is the need for volunteers, because when you are washing dishes, when you are sorting, your different waste streams, you need volunteers to really help do that. And one of the amazing things that festivals such as Hillside does, and Cloud9 that I helped with last summer also did, is that they provide incentives to volunteers, right? So they don't have to pay for the full price or any price for admission. It's a barter system, right? So you get the volunteers to want to come in and want to help and want to do the things that they think are important, but you give them something in return, such as a perfect view of the stage at Hillside or something like that.
Got it.
So that's really, really important.
Where's Cloud9? What kind of festival is that?
It was a very small festival that was north of Kingston. They did have a certain amount of carpooling to try to help, and it was on site, so there was camping as well. I really just helped with the waste area of it, with the food vendors. And what they did in that case was they actually got a company to come in and supply reusable dishes and cups for all the food vendors. And then the company came and took them back and washed them so that they would get reused. So we didn't wash anything on site, but I helped sort everything on site. And they did that so that there was essentially very, very little garbage and no garbage at all from the food vendors.
Pam, do you offer incentives to your volunteers to get them to show up and help out?
Yeah, we certainly do. They get a free festival pass, the commemorative T-shirt, those sorts of things. Mariposa has become a real community. People come from across the province and even from out of province and internationally to volunteer, and it's almost like a homecoming. The community's back together the week of the festival for setup, so they've really developed a camaraderie and relationships with each other. So that also goes a long way.
Kate, how about for you in Guelph? Do you offer incentives to make sure people show up and do their part?
Absolutely. I would put forward that Hillside has one of the sort of strongest volunteer programs sort of in the province for volunteers. We currently have about 1,500 volunteers that we welcome every year, and we have multiple hundreds of people on a waiting list. So it's absolutely, definitely echoing what Pam has said, that it's really a community feel. I think you can really differentiate the festivals that are creating this. We call it, we create a village on an island. Other festivals they create a village in their area, and it's that sort of aspect that you're coming not to just see one particular artist or not to just do one particular thing, but you're coming for the entire experience. You're coming to volunteer and to be part of something, and that we really see that that's sort of what people are looking for at our events.
Did I hear that right? You have a waiting list for volunteers?
Yes, we do. We feel very lucky. Yes.
Not everybody who volunteers actually gets to volunteer?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Tell me, what's your background in this? Because how did this become a big deal for you?
For me personally?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a musician myself. I grew up in southwestern Ontario. And I think like many people, I attended my first music festival, around the age of 8 or 9, attended with my family. And just so much more than, going to a concert to see a particular artist, which of course is amazing and life-changing in and of itself. But again, it's this idea that you go to this particular place where, everyone is there. They're there not only to, enjoy art and creativity, but they're there to, participate in something that's bigger than themselves. So, certainly for me, I went on to, study music at the University of Toronto, but certainly for me, this idea of, working for not-for-profit organizations that, create art and creative expressions and experiences for people is incredibly rewarding.
Well, Pam, I'm wondering how this transition took place because, I'm willing to bet that when you and I were kids, we'd go to these music festivals and we'd bring a picnic lunch and we would leave our crap on the lawn and didn't think for 1 second about cleaning up after ourselves. So we're a long way from that now. How did it happen?
That's right. We had a young board member that was an advocate for environmental sustainability. His father happened to be president of the local conservation club, as I mentioned earlier. So that club came in and they were really the impetus behind getting our greening program up and going. They kept it on the radar. They kept the pressure on because, to be honest, there's lost revenue for greening. So for example, we used to sell bottled water. So we lost that revenue stream. So we really had to keep that impetus going. And the Conservation Club was the group to do that. And gradually over time, we turned people's opinions and listeners' perspectives changed as well. And they came to expect it. So it's thanks to that group and the acceptance of our board of directors, our volunteers, and our patrons that this has become a living thing, and we continue to make progress.
Well, Gabby, I need to find out how big, how significant are these initiatives really? Because while it's wonderful that it's all happening, does it actually make a significant enough contribution to our environment to make a difference?
It actually does. If you look at an entire festival, though, you have to understand that the biggest part of the footprint is really transportation of both the musicians and everybody participating in the festival, as well as the patrons to the festival. So that's the biggest part. But if you take, once people are there, if you take that segment, the transportation segment away, then waste management becomes a very large part of it. It can be up to 30% or so of the ecological footprint of a festival, or more, depending on the festival. So, and we all know that plastic recycling is broken, and plastics stay in the environment for centuries. So those sorts of things really are important, and they're becoming more and more important to the people who come to the festivals, which I think is kind of one of the serious messages of this. It's not necessarily just that we're trying to make a difference, but it's that the people who are now participating in these festivals really expect these things from the festivals that they are going to.
Okay, I am going to speak some bureaucratese here now, because we're going to read the City of Toronto Code Chapter 743, which, as you all well know, is very important in this line of work that you're in. Sheldon, how'd you like to bring this quote board up, and I will read it. This is from the City of Toronto's website, Guidance for Planning Events in Toronto, and it goes like this. As a part of a street event permit, special event park permit, and permit for civic squares, event organizers must create, submit a waste management plan. Event organizers must consider the type and amount of waste their event will generate. They are responsible for the cleanup and removal of garbage and debris and restoring the public right-of-way to its original condition. Failure to restore the public right-of-way to its original condition will result in the city taking responsibility for the cleanup and the applicant held responsible for all fees incurred. Aha. So, question number one, Gabby, does that really happen?
Well, I've never been to a festival like in Toronto, so I honestly have no idea. But where the two festivals that I went to, you could not tell the next day or even by the end of the festival cleanup that we had even been there. So absolutely, for Skeleton Park Arts Festival in Kingston and for Cloud9, there was no trace left. It was quite impressive. And for the farmers market on any given Sunday, by 3 o'clock, once the market closes at 2, by 3 o'clock, you don't have a clue that we were even there. So it is we definitely take care of all of that. Yeah. Okay,
Pam, how about to you? How much of what you do is because Aurelia City Hall puts a lot of pressure on you to make sure it looks like you weren't there by the time you leave?
I'm going to turn it around a little bit. We do have a permitting process. However, the City of Aurelia modeled their event management handbook and guideline based on the activities of Mariposa. So we were instrumental in having the city develop those sorts of guidelines. And we constantly get congratulated at the end of the festival and told that we've left the park in better shape than we received it. So we're quite proud of our track record.
Okay, Kate, how about to you? I know you're doing a good job, but there must be municipalities around Ontario that have to put a lot of pressure on event organizers, or else. That happens, I presume.
Yeah, I presume so. Yeah, and I think it's all to the good that municipalities are, being a bit more overt with that language about saying, this is not just sort of a nice thing that you could do, but this is really what we expect. And I think that's just going to help all events, practice better. Strategies to reduce waste and to reduce the amount of people who are driving to events, things like that. Hillside Festival happens to take place in a conservation area, so our main partner is of course the Conservation Authority. And again, I really echo what Pam said, is that because our festivals have been around for so long, these partnerships have really, I think, predated a lot of the idea that these strategies can be put down into policy. And so they it's important for us to, just as part of our organizational mandate, to leave it better than we found it. And we're not particularly doing that because of any municipal policy, but absolutely I support that those things should be in writing and they should be enforceable, because that will help us all improve.
You're in your 40th year at Hillside?
Yes, going into the 41st.
Going into the 41st season. Things, I presume, are dramatically different in the way you handle these issues today than they would have been when you started. Fair to say?
Absolutely.
I mean, you weren't born when it started, but I'm sure you've heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, imagine the changes that have taken place with transportation, with the idea of people moving from one part of the country to another, the idea of bringing international artists from across the world to your event. What kind of the changes in conversations that we've had over the decades. I mean, yeah, it's absolutely a different conversation.
Pam, you're doing a lot for Mariposa, but what is sort of the next frontier in terms of environmental sensibility for you folks?
I think looking at alternate energy supply, so things like solar energy, would be certainly one initiative that we're looking into. Transportation is, I think Gabby said, is a huge issue, and we're fortunate at this point to be able to partner up with two other festivals on the same weekend, Ottawa Blues Festival and Northern Lights Boreal in Sudbury. So if an artist flies into Toronto, they can go to Ottawa, Orillia, Sudbury. So looking at those sorts of alternate transportations options for people.
Right. Kate, what's the next frontier for you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the idea of transportation, because of course, we audit our, energy consumption, our carbon footprint every year in order to, we do fundraise in order to purchase carbon offsets to make Hillside, a net carbon zero festival. But absolutely, I think it's something that's being talked about among all festival partners kind of across the world, as travel of not only the patrons to the festival, but also the artists, if they're flying in from Europe or they're flying in from Africa, that's an incredible, amount of emissions. So I think that's something that we're talking about, is to encourage a reduction in those emissions. Like, for example, a lot of festivals will have a radius clause, or any concert venue really saying, I'm going to book this band or this artist to play, and I don't want them to play for 6 weeks on either side of my date for 300 kilometers. Because, of course, you want to be the one who presents that very fun and very cool artist, and you want people to want to come to your event. But, I mean, that really encourages people to have to fly and travel a long way in order to get to their next concert engagement. And that, that just contributes to these emissions. So, if we can all partner together for the concept of slow touring, allowing artists to play more in a smaller geographic area, perhaps that's another way we can reduce these emissions.
Pam, how many guests come to Mariposa, to the festival, during the course of it?
We typically have 12,000 people on site each day, so upwards over 30,000 people.
And when does it happen?
You can imagine July 5th to 7th.
So that's a lot of potential mess, isn't it?
It is a lot. Yep.
So you guys have really got to be on your game.
Well, and as I said, patrons and artists have bought into the process. So we have waste diversion stations that are resourced. What we found across the province is each community may have a different recycling program, a different composting program, and people were standing in front of our waste stations saying, I don't know where this goes. So we now have volunteers that resource those stations, say, yep, that can go in compost. Even though it can't in your community. So I think education and communication is also a real key to this.
Gotcha. And Kate, for your festival, when does it happen?
So July 19th to 21st.
And how many people are you expecting?
About 8,000 people a day.
8,000 a day?
A day, yes.
So
yes, so about 24,000
by the time it's all said and done. Okay. And how far away do they come from?
I think, again, like I'm sure Mariposa as well, we draw certainly from Ontario, but absolutely we see people purchasing tickets as well as, of course, coming to volunteer from across Canada as well as, really around the world. And it really, definitely, the word homecoming came up a little bit earlier. Absolutely, it's a community celebration when you have an event that's been going for so many years, and that really draws people back.
Right. Gabby, let's finish off with you here. In our last minute, I'm sure there are people who are either organizers of or volunteers for various festivals across the province who are watching or listening right now. Give them some advice. How can they make their festivals better?
Oh, there are so many ways that they can do that. One of the things that they can look at is something called Creative Green Tools Canada, which can help them figure out what it is about their festival that they can make more sustainable. They can also reach out to other festival organizers in their area, people like us, who can help tell them about the sorts of things that we can do. Look at websites for other festivals and see what other festivals are doing. And it's all, like has been said, about communication, trying to get the word out about the possibilities and the way things can work, and finding volunteers to help you do all of those things. Yeah, having people in front of your waste station is critically important to actually being able to sort your waste properly. So all of those things are available to people, but they have to be looking for them.
Very good advice. And Pam, can I just finally say how much we're going to miss not seeing Gordon Lightfoot at Mariposa this coming summer, which is, what can I'm not over it yet, as you can see. That's really sad, and I bet you're not either.
No, we're not either. And just so people know, we renamed our main stage last year the Lightfoot stage. Aww. So in honor of Gordon. So his memory will be alive at the festival. We'll miss seeing him stroll across the parking lot with a guitar in his hand, but we certainly will recognize him during the festival.
Brilliant. I want to thank the three of you for coming on to TVO tonight and sharing your views on this. Gabriella D., Pam Carter, Kate Johnston. Good luck with your festivals in the summer, everybody. Great to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Meet Yuvraj Samra, widely believed to be the next big star in one of Canada's fastest growing sports, cricket. Cricket runs in Yuvraj's blood. Not only is he the son of immigrants from India, a country considered by many to be a powerhouse in the sport, but he's been swinging a cricket bat almost as long as he's been walking.
I got into the sport through my dad. He introduced me to this game at a really young age. I was like 3 years old. He used to take me to his games, and that's where I got the interest in playing in cricket.
Earlier this year, at only 17 years old, Yuvraj realized a long-standing dream when he was selected to represent the Canadian national team in an international tournament.
Worked away down to deep third. He's going to get one. He's going to get more. He's going to get 4. Century for the 17-year-old, highly talented, left-handed Yuvraj Samra. Take a bow, young man. Soak it in.
Making the team, I feel like it was an honor. It was a dream come true.
Team Canada recently made its T20 World Cup debut against the U.S. And while Yuvraj is not on that roster, he represents a steady flow of talent ready to take the field for the national team. Canada's participation in the World Cup has put a spotlight on the sport here, but surprisingly, cricket has a rich history in this country. In 1867, Canada's first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, declared cricket the country's national sport. But you can even go further back. The first ever international match was played between the U.S., seen here, and Canada in New York in 1844. And in 1827, George A. Barber, an English schoolteacher, played a key role in setting up the Toronto Cricket Club and came to be known as the father of Canadian cricket. There are 3 forms of cricket, each format with its own set of rules. Test cricket, the oldest format, usually played over 5 days. One-day cricket, played over approximately 7 hours. And the newest and most lucrative format, 20-over cricket, or T20 cricket, played over 4 hours, similar to a baseball game. Cricket is played between two teams of 11 players on a large oval field. The center of the field is known as the pitch, which measures about 20 meters in length. The outer perimeter of the playing field is known as the boundary. When a team is fielding, all 11 players are on the field at the same time, 9 of whom are out in the field in various positions. There's one bowler, similar to a pitcher in baseball, and one wicket-keeper, who stands behind the stumps. Think of them as the catcher. And the team that's batting has not one, but 2 players standing on opposite ends of the pitch. Scoring runs in cricket can be done in a few different ways. To score 1 run, the batter hits the ball within the boundary and runs to the opposite end of the pitch, while their batting teammate runs in the other direction. Runs can also be accumulated without running the length of the pitch. If a ball hits the ground before touching the boundary, that adds 4 runs to the total score. When a batter hits the ball over the boundary, that adds 6 runs to the total score.
Very good from Jimmy Nisha.
There are several ways for the fielding team to get a batter out. If a bowler throws the ball and knocks off the bails of the stumps, if a fielder or wicketkeeper catches the ball before it hits the ground, similar to a flyout in baseball,
The Renegades! No, stopped!
or a batter is declared out when they're running the length of the pitch but do not cross the line before the fielding team knocks off the bails of the stumps. A match is won when one team outscores the other. Cricket is a global sport, played across 6 continents and over 100 countries, including Australia, England, India, Pakistan, South Africa, the West Indies, United States, and Canada.
Yardley leading them, and here's Tom Dollery.
Historically, there is a perception of cricket as a stuffy, colonial, upper-class sport. Despite its history and its popularity worldwide, cricket never really took off in Canada until recently.
When I was playing cricket as a kid, nobody played cricket. It was a rarity to say you played cricket.
12 years old. Had played a lot of, you could call North American traditional sports like hockey, baseball, and soccer. But again, seeing one World Cup game, it was India versus Pakistan in the 2003 World Cup that inspired me to pick up a cricket bat instead of a baseball bat.
Both John Stevenson and Rahul Srinivasan are hoping to change that and continue to grow the sport here in Canada.
It's got one of the largest viewerships internationally. Fans from Pakistan and India and of course Australia, New Zealand and the UK. It's not native to North America. It didn't originate from North America. So hockey, football, basketball all originated in this country, whereas cricket was not part of a North American culture and ethos. The emergence of the sport has been dramatic, and to see us qualifying for the Worlds is amazing.
A marketing research report from Cultural IQ found cricket to be one of the fastest growing sports in Canada, with an estimated 5 million fans.
Last ball of the innings. And he's put it away. Oh, has he? Yes, into the crowd.
One of the reasons, the creation of the shortest format, T20 cricket, about 2 decades ago.
The game now is very much geared to engaging with young people, to really get excited about a fast-paced sport that really competes with basketball and baseball and football in terms of time of game, but more importantly, frequency of energy.
According to Rahul, there is still a lot of work to be done to grow the sport in Canada, but suggests 3 main areas of focus to capitalize on this momentum.
The players, the fans, and the infrastructure. The way that we see it is there's plenty of fans. There's plenty of people who are new to Canada or who have been living in Canada who support cricket in general. That's not an issue. The number of players is not an issue as well. I think when it comes to players, the investments in aligning the player ecosystem need to be made. And what I mean by that is a young player needs to know, what competitions do I need to take part in to actually make a national team? How do I find coaching? How do I find facilities? And then I would say the third point of the triangle, which is truly the weakness, is infrastructure. Our belief is that when there is adequate cricket infrastructure here in this country, that it will realize its potential as the fastest growing sport in Canada. I think when you look at the tailwinds from immigration and you see this inflection point that we're seeing now in terms of multiple stakeholders investing in the sport, it's only a matter of time. I think by 2031, cricket will be a top 5 sport in this country, and there's really no reason for it not to become that.
As for Yuvraj, he has seen the game grow firsthand, from stiffer competition and more local leagues cropping up. His main focus remains the same: represent Canada at cricket's highest level, one bat at a time.
My hope is that Canada competes against the top 5 countries, and we play up there and we keep playing up there.
Think about how well you're doing financially these days compared to in 2015 when the current federal government first took power. Are you doing better? Worse? Did COVID have an impact on your circumstances? Pollster Greg Lyle has been looking into these and other questions, and the founder and president of the Innovative Research Group joins us now in studio with his findings. Great to see you again.
Good to see you.
You flew all the way in from the left coast for this.
Absolutely.
Well, not quite, but
you in Yorkville.
There you go. We're happy to have your. We're happy to exploit the fact that you're here to talk to the York Minster.
Oh, York Minster.
That's right. Lecture series to do this. Let's put this graphic up right away, Sheldon. If you would, you asked the question, Greg, how you doing these days? And 25% of people said better off, but 41% of people said they are doing worse off now compared to 2015. You were in the field March 14 to 25, surveying almost 2,300 people. Now, as people considered whether they were doing better or worse, what kind of metrics did they use or did you offer to determine the answer to that?
Well, we asked people to tell us. So we then said, why do you feel that way? And so if you say you're better off, you normally attribute that to your own personal efforts, right? So I got ahead in my career, or I've retired, or we've had kids, or things like that. If you say worse off, then you usually attribute that to inflation, the cost of living, the cost of housing. I can't get a home, or if I can get a home, I can't get a home in the neighborhood I grew up in.
The biggest chunk of people who said they were better off said they were better off because they got a better job, or they made more money in their current job. The biggest chunk of people who said that they were worse off complained about what in particular? What aspect of that list?
Well, it was several things, right? So inflation and cost of living, though, were central. And within cost of living, housing is the single biggest issue.
Let me follow up on inflation. Like inflation has, I know inflation hit 7% a couple of years ago, but inflation has been a lot tamer recently. Why are people still saying inflation is terrible?
Well, I actually think that that's not really what they're responding to. So a lot of economists have been talking about the fact that Canadian real incomes have been declining. And that's tied into productivity. So there's a whole policy side to this that the average person is not that into. But when we look at what the reasons are, it really comes down to, particularly for younger people, that the cost of buying into the housing market, or even just renting now, is far higher than it used to be. If you look at the multiples of income to buy a home now, whereas in previous generations it was 3 or 4 times your annual income was the price of a house, now it can be 10 or 15 times an annual income. That's a big difference. And you know, when you see a politician like Poilievre out there saying, you know, we had a deal and that deal is broken and we need to get it back, there's a lot of people that feel that way, and you know, that's been a big part of his connecting. But the real income thing, this is where inflation, a lot of people might think the Bank of Canada reduces interest rates. They never do just one. There'll likely be more. If interest rates come down, affordability should go away. But if the real issue is real incomes, then what happens is that when interest rates come down, you still look around and say, you know, I used to be able to buy this stuff 5 years ago. Now I can't buy that stuff anymore. I miss my old life.
So that's a much trickier problem. This may seem like a strange follow-up here, but are you sure, I know you have to do this all the time when you put questions out in the field, are you sure people are giving you the straight goods?
Yes. Yeah, because we asked several questions that all link together, right? So we've actually built this over some time. So in 2007, Roger Martin, who some people watching the show may remember, was running the Competitive Institute and
Rotman School.
Yeah, and we were doing, we did a set of questions for him on satisfaction with standard of living. And at that time, 3 times as many people were satisfied with their standard of living as dissatisfied. And we looked at that again in 2018, it had come down, and we looked at it again in 2024, and it came down dramatically. So now we're in a situation where if you're Gen Z, Gen X, or a millennial, there are as many people unhappy with their standard of living as happy. And if you go to Gen X and the boomers, well, Gen X is basically like millennials and Gen Z. The boomers are quite a bit less satisfied now. They're more satisfied than dissatisfied, but it's come down a long way. The only group that's still mostly happy is the silent generation that's well into retirement now.
I guess I'm asking this because, there's a lot of antipathy for the current prime minister across the country right now. And how do you know that when you ask the question, people aren't thinking to themselves, I'm kind of ticked off at Trudeau today, and so I'm going to say I feel worse off and I'm angrier about this, that, or the other thing?
Right. But again, we first became aware of this as a problem without any reference to Trudeau. We first became aware of this as a problem on the standard of living question. And so then where I naturally went to was, okay, well, what does that mean for politicians? Are they wearing this or not? And so I started out with the question that Reagan asked viewers in the Reagan-Carter debate, which is, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? But to make it work federally, you have to bring it back to 2015, so you can't directly repeat it. And then I asked people, do you think your provincial government is making things better or worse for you? And is your federal government making things better or worse for you? So provincial governments aren't doing too well, except in Alberta, where Danielle Smith is actually seen as doing a better than average job at making things better. But if you look at federally, 50% say that the Trudeau Liberal government is making things worse, and only 12% say they're making things better. And so again, I started on how satisfied are you with your standard of living, taking it out of politics and just asking about everyday life. And then I look for the political implications.
Gotcha. This is a typical question that people ask as well. They want to know whether they feel they're doing better than their parents, or, there's always the expectation that the next generation does better than the previous. So here you go. When asked whether they agree or disagree with the statement, I am able to afford a better standard of living than my parents, if you go back to 2007, 58% of the people agreed with that notion. 58%. Today, that number is 36%. Why has it dropped so precipitously?
Well, and again, the policy answer to that is twofold, right? Number one is declining real incomes, and number two, the issue is housing. And the reason why I think this matters is that neither of these problems is going to be fixed tomorrow, if they're going to be fixed at all. The productivity issue, if you go back to Brian Mulroney's leadership campaign and read the first substantive chapter of his book. This is 1983. 1983. His first chapter was about Canada's productivity problem.
Not a new problem.
Right, so it's not a new problem. And again, Roger Martin, the reason I first pulled it was because Roger Martin looked at the facts and said Canada had a problem in 2007. So, a whole bunch of governments have looked at that problem, Brian Mulroney, Paul Martin, Stephen Harper, and not been able to create long-term lasting fixes. Then the second issue is housing. So that's become front and center. Everyone's talking about it. But the reality is it's not getting better yet.
Okay, but humor me for a second here.
Yeah.
Prime Minister Trudeau, for several years now, has said, if you get in trouble, we've got your backs. And, I'm looking at the programs here. The supports that came forward during COVID, the CERB, the subsidies for business, they were really generous. They helped a lot of people get through a pretty terrible time in their lives. There have been tax cuts for moderate income people. There have been tax increases on the, better off among us as well. There have been increased supports for childcare. He's got a bit of a record there to run on, and yet people are still pretty sour on him right now. Because?
Well, I think the average person would look at those as Band-Aids that are being put on top of a fundamental problem that's not being fixed, right? And so they look at the life they live today and say, we can't live today the way we lived 5 years ago, 10 years ago. We can't keep up with our own standard of living. And with the reasons we can all see. And the reality of the interest rates coming down is that house prices will soon go up again, right? Because when it's easier to be able to afford your mortgage, that usually results in house prices going up. So if you're someone that's been saving up your money trying to get into the housing market and you didn't move yet, you may well see that basket of money that you put together to buy in now is not going to be enough, that you're going to have to save even more to catch up.
Okay, but one of the things that has always intrigued me about your business is sometimes public opinion mirrors facts,
right,
and sometimes it doesn't. You saw the polling in the United States in the last couple of weeks, which said, what do you think inflation is doing right now? And the majority of people think inflation is out of control.
Right.
It's not, actually. Empirically, provably, factually true, inflation's not out of control in the States. They said the same thing about, do you feel we're in a recession right now? And the majority of people said yes.
Right.
And the fact is, they're not in recession in the United States. They're not. I mean, if you define recession by 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, they're not in a recession. So that's where public opinion does not mirror the facts.
Well,
Does it in Canada?
But let me just challenge you on that.
Okay.
So that's averages. There are a lot of people in the United States that are on the low side of the average, right? And in fact, income disparity, right? The issue of where incomes lie, when you think about the average, there is a small group of people that have a whole lot of money and they're getting more money. And so that pulls the average up. But a lot of Americans don't get to participate in that.
Okay, great point.
So how we measure these things may not be reflective of how the average person experiences them.
But in Canada, do you say the facts mirror public opinion and vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, I just rely on the economists. And what the economists tell me is that real incomes are coming down. So after all these programs, real incomes are coming down. And a big part of that is because we don't make the same investments in terms of capital as the Americans do, right? American businesses invest more in capital. But in this last budget, we actually made it more expensive to invest in capital when we increased the capital inclusion rate.
Well, we didn't do it, the federal government did.
Right, but as a country, we did this, right? Collectively. So we'll take our partisan hats off and put on our Canadian flags. So we as a country have done this. This is not likely to help real incomes. And in fact, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find the federal Liberals, or in fact, very many federal politicians, talking very much about the problem of real incomes, right? There's been, this is a broader conversation, but there's a fairly large disconnect between the political debate that's going on and the substantive challenges facing Canada, right? I mean, we have a problem that we've all known about for decades, which is we have an aging population. And what that means is that there's going to be fewer people working and more people claiming entitlement programs like healthcare. So the bill's going to get up. And there's only 4 ways to solve that problem. You can borrow money to support public programs, you can cut public programs, you can raise taxes on public programs, or raise taxes on the fewer people that are working, or you can raise real incomes. Right? Well, the easy answer, the politically easy answer, not an easy answer to do in terms of policy, is to raise real incomes, right? So when you look at what's going on, whether you look at it from the lens of how people feel about their quality of life or their standard of living now, or if you look at what will the fiscal house look like in 2035, the answer to both those questions is let's fix real incomes. But it's not on the front of the public stage.
Let me share some more numbers here, which, well, I won't characterize them. I'll get you to characterize them. Here we go, Sheldon. Board number 2. Does our free enterprise economic system work well? That's the question you asked. You asked it 4 years ago, and the answer was 54% believe yes. The majority of Canadians believed yes. You asked the same question today, and the number is 36%. Only 36% of Canadians polled say the free enterprise system, economically speaking, is working well. Are you as distressed by that as I think most people would be?
Well, I'm not distressed about it. It's the way people feel, and I like to know what the reality is out there of how people feel.
But if only 1/3 of the people think our current economic system is working well, that ain't good.
But it's a symptom of the standard of living again. So if I feel unhappy with my standard of living, if I don't think that I can live the Canadian dream, There's got to be a cause for that. And so people, and again, it's not part of the public debate. We don't hear a lot of people talking about that. So the public doesn't have a narrative to be able to frame what the problem is. And so they're looking around at suspects. And one of the suspects is maybe the rules don't work. And you also have to remember that we had a big debate about this during COVID, right? The whole, we need to build back better.
Yep.
We need a radical transformation of our economic system. And so, you know, there were a lot of questions being raised at that point in time. The issue federally in terms of the debate is that the Liberals are taking a lot of heat for not delivering on a better standard of living. And the NDP have been propping the Liberals up. So there's nobody on the center left that can take a sort of Bernie Sanders line on what we need to do to improve standard of living. But once this government falls, as it almost certainly will, then the door opens for either the Liberals or the NDP to take that line, that argument. And then what gets interesting then is Poilievre gets this. So Poilievre understands that there's anger on the right and the left, and he's trying to channel that anger from both sides, and doing so very effectively at the moment. The question will be, once he gets into government, right, how does he keep the angry people inside the tent when he's the man, as opposed to the guy criticizing the man?
Okay, you've twice in that answer said the government, as it almost certainly will, fall, and
Right.
Poilievre, once he gets into government, you're basically treating the next election as if it's a fait accompli.
Right.
So is that to say I mean, again, based on your experience and your research in the field, is there no path back at the moment for the current Prime Minister?
No.
Period,
It's
full
over.
stop.
It's over for Trudeau. Right.
So the only way-
So the main question, if you're a Liberal insider and you're Trudeau, the question is, does he serve the party better by taking a hit? Or does he serve the party better by getting out of the way and letting someone else take a crack? Is there an outside chance that someone else might become safe change versus Poilievre scary change? Yes. Is it very likely? No.
You may not like to comment on the competition, but I did see a poll, I don't know, a week or two ago that said, yes, there's a great deal of antipathy around the current Prime Minister, but there was no love for Pierre Poilievre either. They just he was considered less worse than the Prime Minister. What do you infer from that?
Well, I don't actually agree with that. And I'm not saying there's 11 for Pierre Poilievre, but we tested his ads in November, right? So we put 7 ads out to the Canadian public and said, what do you think about these ads? And they tested as well as the best ads we've ever tested before, which ironically were Justin Trudeau's ads
What do
in the
people like
2015. He feels their pain. Like when he goes out there and he says, you know, I grew up in a neighborhood like this, right? Increasingly people that are growing up here can't afford to stay here. And that's wrong. The system's broke, we need to fix it. A lot of people nod their head. A lot of people that don't feel like conservatives nod their head.
I'm going to be very careful how I ask this question. And
Yeah.
I've met Pierre Poilievre. He's a very capable politician. There's no
Right.
question about it. He put a 20-minute mini documentary on debt up online and got hundreds of thousands of hits on the thing. So
Right.
he's got an ability to connect with people on social media
Right.
in a way that I haven't seen before. Having said that, I spoke to somebody the other day who said, I really want to vote Conservative in the next election, but I'd really like Pierre Poilievre to stop acting like such an objectionable, and then he used a word that rhymes with trick.
Right.
Based on your research, do you think he ought to stop acting like such an attack dog and start acting more prime ministerial?
So based on my research, no. Right. So you know, I haven't tested everything he's done, right? But again, we tested these 7 different ads, and there's sort of a range of intensity to them. And I sort of had the impression that when you're hot on TV in an ad as a politician, that people tend to react badly to that. But that's just not true. Not at this time for that person.
People dig that.
Now I would argue, as someone that's a big believer in democracy, and that believes that whipsawing policy is bad for the country, that he would serve the country better by toning down some of that rhetoric. But I understand why he's doing it. He's doing it to connect with the angry people, both on the left as well as on the right, and he is connecting with them.
Okay, in our last minute and change here, I want to ask you about all of the hints that Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, has been dropping over the last few weeks about not adhering to the fixed election date law, and in fact, maybe calling an early election 3 years into a 4-year term, which would mean he would go next spring as opposed to June 4th, 2026, which is when the law says he's supposed to have the next election. Do you have any polling as to whether or not the public would like an early election in the province?
Yeah, we haven't polled on this election at this time. Historically, when we asked those questions, what we found is people that are not government supporters want an election at any time. They will never complain about an election, whether it's early or on schedule. And that government supporters tend to rally behind the Premier. Whatever the Premier says, they generally buy into. So it's a risk, right? But historically, and we were talking earlier about John Horgan in BC, who had a fixed election law and then in the middle of COVID broke that law to call an early election.
And won a majority.
Won a majority government.
Yeah. Very quickly, as I follow up on that, because you've had the job of advising premiers on this question of when to go, and I look at the scenario right now and I see Doug Ford almost certainly would rather run with Justin Trudeau in office in Ottawa as opposed to a big Pierre Poilievre majority government. He might want to get out there early and before the RCMP come back, potentially with charges against his government for Greenbelt fiasco shenanigans. And you know, we've got this history in the province of always, whatever party we put in power federally, we put a different one in power provincially.
Right.
So add it all up, do you think you should go early?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I would, honestly, because normally you have some external event that you can use as an excuse to go. And right now, I don't see where that event is. And arguably, I don't think he has a lot to fear about the first year in power with the Poilievre government, because I think they have overlapping agendas. And there's actually quite a bit they could get done in that year. I think once the Poilievre government's been in there for a bit, I think then I would be more worried about it, but I wouldn't be worried about the first year of a Poilievre government.
Fascinating. That's Greg Lyle, founder and president, Innovative Research Group. Greg, always appreciate your visits to our studio. Thanks.
Thank you.
Tomorrow on the agenda.
Too often we are devaluing one side or the other, and what we're not focusing on adequately is the humanity of both.
That's tomorrow on the agenda.